Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. And you read that headline right. The terrible Star Wars, the fool's gold of Star Wars, has been canceled. And that's a good thing. You're not going to be subjected to some very bad ideas from the Kennedy era because ding dong, the witch is dead. Or in this case, gone. And so is the man baby, otherwise known as James Mangold. Here we go. That's right, Fool's Gold is gone, no longer being mined at Lucasfilm. It's official, James Mangold Star Wars movie is confirmed, quote-unquote, on hold. That's the fancy way to say canceled at Lucasfilm. Kathleen Kennedy reveals the scope of more Lucasfilm project delays in her quote-unquote exit interview, which is good reading over on Deadline if you want to see somebody take zero accountability for massive Star Wars failure. On that note, let's read this article from Marvin, which I think is brilliantly done, as a matter of fact. In her Deadline exit interview, Kennedy acknowledged that Mangold's highly touted project, often referred to as Dawn of the Jedi, is now officially paused despite years of Lucasfilm messaging that suggested the film was actively progressing, which of course nobody believed, including yours truly. The statement marks the first explicit confirmation that James Mangold's Star Wars movie is stalled, validating long-running industry skepticism after the director repeatedly took on work for other studios while Lucasfilm continued to frame his film as part of its future slate. Well, it's not happening. I don't think it's happening ever. And a quiet walk back after years of assurances is something we could have expected from a retiring Kathleen Kennedy after years and years of embarrassment. Actually, 7 years of embarrassment. Lucasfilm previously positioned Mangold's Star Wars movie as a bold new direction for the franchise, emphasizing its ancient timeline and prestige creative team. However, no casting, production, start date, or concrete development milestones were ever announced, nor did we ever hear rumor of them. We knew for sure this thing was not moving forward, just like we knew for sure that we were not getting Game of Thrones failure trilogy, which again was something that was announced in a high-profile way, only to be quietly removed from the schedule. Kennedy's admission that the film is now quote-unquote on hold reframes that silence and not as secrecy, but as inertia, which is stalled. There's no growth at Lucasfilm. There's merely decay. Notably, Kennedy did not cite scheduling conflicts or creative disagreements as the cause. Instead, she emphasized that the film's unconventional nature, hinting that its ambition may have worked against it, which, if that doesn't surprise you, that they were thinking about ambition, it should, because they haven't been ambitious in a long time. James Mangold's standing at Lucasfilm after Indiana Jones and the Dial of Dysentery's failure, well, wasn't so good. In fact, his relationship with Lucasfilm cannot be separated from the performance of that most recent collaboration with the studio, and as I said before, its utter failure. Released with an estimated production budget of reportedly $300 million, well before marketing and really before any of the special effects were added, the film failed to recoup its costs theatrically and became one of the most high-profile box office disappointments. It was a failure and a flop, my friend, in the Disney era of Lucasfilm history, and that's saying something. While Mangold was praised in some circles for his craftsmanship, which I didn't see existed anywhere, the film's commercial outcome illustrated the growing disconnect between Lucasfilm's legacy brands and its audiences, which I guess I'd say was pretty obvious. And of course, that context matters when evaluating the status of Mangold's Star Wars project. Lucasfilm has not publicly linked the film's pause to Dial of Dysentery, but Lucasfilm is now operating in a markedly more cautious environment. As Kathleen Kennedy herself acknowledged in her exit interview, the studios are increasingly risk-averse and under pressure to justify large-scale investments, especially if they're massive failures, especially if commercially there was no viability going in. And that's another thing that needs to be talked about openly. If you already know that your messaging and your political ideology is unpopular, why would you move forward with anything that highlights it and basically force feeds it to an audience that is increasingly disenfranchised by your very efforts? I think everybody could identify that Disney is in major trouble across the board, and not just with Lucasfilm as its only dangerous studio. Marvel's in equal trouble, especially going into an endgame-like massive film with a massive budget when we get to Doomsday. And it looks like that may have some trouble getting off the ground as well, at least in theater performance. And why would you risk another $500 million on a potential failure with the lack of creative that you've demonstrated in all of your television projects lately? I don't know. Somebody answer that question for me in the comments below. But the James Mangold Star Wars movie, described by Kennedy as breaking the mold, would have represented another expensive, prestige-driven swing for a studio already reeling from costly underperformance. In that light, the decision to place the project on quote-unquote hold reads less like an isolated development issue and more like a recalibration of trust, timing, and appetite for risk. There's a lot of various ways that studio heads can say things, and the way Kathleen Kennedy said things in her exit interview was very telling. And I'm not sure that she wasn't forced out the door creatively by Disney, as a wake of awards have shown up in her path on her way, her march out the door. And to be fair, she deserves some of them. Not all of them, because certainly she had better men who were making her career and propping her up, also putting her in positions of power for which she certainly was gravely unprepared, especially the Lucasfilm job, where she led a lot of momentum straight into the ground. But hey, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Do you believe that things will get better with the cancellation of James Mangold's supposed project? Or do you think James Mangold could have been the difference maker? Do you think that it really was just one project away from bringing Star Wars back to massive audiences and creating an event-like attraction out of them, something that's been absent from anything Lucasfilm has made since The Force Awakens? Which again was just ginned up excitement for Star Wars returning, and not so much for a dismantling of all previous lore. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below, or any other thoughts you have on Star Wars, or Kathleen Kennedy, or James Mangold on the whole. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. Just not watching anything Star Wars, at least not recent.